Trump knows that there's two very weak links in the American national security fabric right now. One is Ukraine. He needs to jettison this Ukrainian problem. This has cost America hundreds of billions of dollars, and it's weakened us globally. He needs to jettison that. And he also needs to put NATO on ice. NATO is an organization that's outlived its usefulness. It was a valid, viable organization during the Cold War. Since then, it's become an expansive extension of American imperial hegemony. And I think Trump recognizes that he needs to start focusing on, the things that keep America, relevant in the world today, and not have these parasitic problems attach themselves to America. NATO is a parasite, sucks the lifeblood out of the United States, and Ukraine is the same thing. So Trump, I think, will eventually make the right decision, but it'll be politically difficult for him.
America stands at a crossroads. If Trump returns to power, he could dismantle decades of alliances, cutting Ukraine loose and freezing NATO in its tracks. What Ritter describes isn't just policy. It's a seismic shift that could leave Europe vulnerable and redefine global power. The question is, will Trump make the move? And if he does, what happens next? We've just explored Scott Ritter's latest analysis, shedding light on the complex geopolitical and economic factors shaping the battlefield. But now, let's shift our focus to the latest developments in Ukraine, where tensions are escalating not only on the front lines, but also in the realm of global diplomacy. February 20th, 2025 has brought significant and alarming updates, both militarily and politically. A new phase of Cold War II is unfolding, marked by a fierce confrontation between Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky and former U.S. President Donald Trump. Meanwhile, the battlefield is witnessing intense clashes as Ukraine launches a Bryansk offensive, while Russia makes strategic advances, threatening to collapse Ukrainian defenses in Sudzha. Let's break it all down. One of the most unexpected and politically charged developments has been the growing rift between Zelensky and Trump. While official statements and diplomatic back and forths often make headlines, the real consequences of this confrontation are now coming into focus. Zelensky recently criticized Trump's perception of global affairs, stating that the former U.S. president lives in a world of illusion. But while this may have been a bold rhetorical move, it may also have unforeseen consequences for Ukraine. With Trump's political influence in the U.S. still strong, such statements risk alienating key figures who could shape U.S. foreign policy in the near future. A striking move by Zelensky's administration was the blocking of Truth Social, Donald Trump's social media platform, across Ukraine. This decision has raised serious concerns about freedom of speech, political maneuvering, and the control of information in wartime Ukraine. By cutting off access to a platform directly linked to a major U.S. political figure, Ukraine is not only deepening tensions with Trump, but also sending a message to both its allies and adversaries. Information is now a battleground. But the censorship of Truth Social is not just about limiting Trump's influence. It's about controlling the narrative within Ukraine. This move suggests that Kyiv is becoming increasingly cautious about external voices shaping public opinion, particularly as war fatigue sets in and the country faces mounting internal challenges. Adding another layer to this escalating Cold War 2.0, billionaire Elon Musk has announced that he will disable Starlink access for Ukrainian military forces near the front lines, effective March 1st. This is a major blow for Kyiv. Starlink has been a lifeline for Ukraine's military operations, particularly for drone warfare, battlefield communications, and intelligence sharing. The loss of free, unlimited Starlink access within 80 kilometers of the combat zone will force Ukraine to find alternative methods of communication, a task that is neither simple nor immediate. Musk's decision, however, is not absolute. Reports suggest that Russia will still have access to Starlink services, likely because they are paying for it. This raises questions about Musk's neutrality and business interests in the war, further complicating an already chaotic battlefield scenario. While political tensions between Kyiv and Washington escalate, Ukraine is also making bold moves on the battlefield. Intelligence reports indicate that Ukraine is preparing a large-scale offensive in the Bryansk region, an area of strategic significance along the Russia-Ukraine border. The timing of this offensive is crucial. Analysts suggest that the goal of this operation is to disrupt ongoing negotiations between Russia and the U.S. By launching a major military maneuver, Ukraine hopes to shift global attention back to the war, moving focus away from the Zelensky-Trump conflict. Prove to Western allies that Ukraine is still capable of offensive operations despite Russian advances. Force Russia to redeploy troops from other fronts, potentially weakening their ability to press forward in key battlegrounds. Satellite intelligence and Russian military reports confirm that Ukraine has amassed a force of over 5,000 soldiers and 200-plus armored vehicles near the Bryansk border. This suggests that Ukraine is preparing for a serious push, possibly in multiple waves. But there's another angle. This offensive might be a feint. Russia, well aware of Ukraine's buildup, may be preparing countermeasures to turn this offensive into a costly failure. While Ukraine gears up for its Bryansk offensive, Russian forces have been making gains elsewhere. Reports from the front line indicate that Ukrainian defenses in Sudzha have started to collapse, with Russian units pushing deep into Ukrainian-held territory. For months, Ukraine had successfully held the Sudzha sector, repelling repeated Russian assaults, but recent developments indicate a strategic shift in Russia's offensive tactics. Precision strikes on Ukrainian supply lines have created logistical problems. Massive aerial bombardments using FAB-3000 bombs have devastated Ukrainian fortifications. Ground forces, supported by armor and artillery, have pushed Ukrainian defenders back. As of February 20th, the Russian army controls most of the territory inside the Sudzha pocket, creating a major operational crisis for Ukraine. The fall of Sudzha would have severe consequences for Ukraine. Loss of a critical defensive position, allowing Russia to advance further into Sumy Oblast. Potential encirclement of Ukrainian forces still holding out in isolated pockets. Increased pressure on Ukrainian logistics, making it harder to reinforce other battlefronts. The 47th Mechanized Brigade, which has been the core of Ukraine's defense in the region, is now facing a grim reality. Reports suggest that Russian forces are less than 6 kilometers away from cutting off the last supply route into Sudzha. If the Russians manage to secure key highways and rail lines, they could trap a significant portion of Ukraine's battle-hardened troops, forcing either a retreat or a bloody last stand. With Russian forces advancing in Sudzha and Ukraine preparing a desperate offensive in Bryansk, the war is entering a critical phase. If Ukraine's offensive in Bryansk succeeds, it might force Russia to shift resources, buying Kyiv time to stabilize its defenses elsewhere. If Ukraine's offensive fails and Sudzha falls, Russia could gain a major strategic upper hand, opening the way for deeper incursions into Sumy Oblast. One thing is clear. Both sides understand the stakes, and the next few weeks could reshape the war's trajectory in a profound way. As we analyze these developments, it's evident that Ukraine is fighting on multiple fronts, both militarily and politically. The Cold War II dynamics between Zelensky and Trump are reshaping alliances, while battlefield developments in Bryansk and Sudzha could determine the next phase of the war. With Elon Musk cutting off Starlink, Russia making territorial gains, and Ukraine launching a bold offensive, the situation remains fluid and unpredictable. The world is watching, and the next moves by both Kyiv and Moscow could decide the war's direction in 2025. The war in Ukraine has reached a critical turning point, not just on the battlefield, but also in the realm of international politics. The growing rift between Zelensky and Trump, the censorship of Truth Social, and Elon Musk's decision to cut off Starlink all highlight how global power struggles are now deeply intertwined with Ukraine's fight for survival. At the same time, the battlefield itself is witnessing high-stakes maneuvers, with Ukraine launching a bold offensive in Bryansk, while Russian forces push deeper into Sudzha, threatening a devastating breakthrough. This is more than just another phase of the war. It's a battle for narrative control, technological dominance, and military survival. If Ukraine's Bryansk offensive succeeds, it could disrupt Russian operations and buy Kyiv some much-needed time. But if Russia capitalizes on its momentum in Sudzha, Ukraine could face one of its most dangerous setbacks yet. As we watch this situation unfold, one thing is clear. The decisions made in the coming weeks will shape the future of this war. The global consequences of these developments will extend far beyond Eastern Europe, affecting NATO, U.S. foreign policy, and even the balance of power between democratic and authoritarian states worldwide. Now, we want to hear from you. What do you think about these developments? Will Ukraine's offensive in Bryansk shift the momentum, or will Russia's advance in Sudzha prove decisive? And what are your thoughts on the geopolitical battle between Zelensky and Trump? Drop your thoughts in the comments below, and don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more in-depth updates and analysis. Stay tuned. This war is far from over.